What type of images work in the Innovation Center? You can make images on several pieces of equipment in the Innovation Center, especially the laser and vinyl cutters. But you need a certain kind of image, one that is less familiar, called a vector image. This video will explain what vector images are and why they are used. There are two major types of digital images that you will find: vector and raster images. Raster images are more common. They are made up of small squares, pixels. Photographs and many complex images are raster images, as are nearly all normal internet image search results. Raster images can be very complicated and visually complex, but their drawback is that they are much less editable than vector images. If you'd like to change their shape or color, the methods of doing that are more complicated. In GIMP, a free raster editing program, an edit to their shape requires distorting the image manually, and changing their color can be imprecise. An especially significant drawback is that their size is not scalable. If you find an image that is 400 pixels by 400 pixels, it can only be that size or smaller. Scaling it larger scales the individual pixels to be larger, which degrades the quality. Vector images are made differently. They have mathematical nodes and paths that define them. That allows them to be easily editable and scalable to any size. In Inkscape, a free vector editing program, changing a vector image's color is as easy as clicking a color. Changing their scale to any size, even billboard size, never reduces quality. Changing their actual shape can be done precisely using nodes and paths. Vector images can be both very simple, icons are made from them, or quite complex. In a complex shape, their editability makes it easy to simplify them as needed, another key benefit. If you want to find vector or raster images, it's important to know what file types they come in. For vector images, .svg, scalable vector graphic, is a common and highly usable format. Inkscape saves projects as SVGs. This is the recommended file type to look for. .ai is an Adobe Illustrator file. Illustrator is another vector editing program, and those files are also usable in the Innovation Center. .dxf is drawing interchange format. It is a vector format that can work but may require conversion. .eps, encapsulated PostScript, is another vector format that can work but may require conversion. Inkscape doesn't easily open a .eps file on some computers. .pdf, portable document format, can contain both vector and raster images, but it might only be raster images, so therefore it may or may not work. There are several types of raster images. We'll mention the most common ones. .jpeg is an extremely widely used raster image format. Your phone camera may take images in this format. Raster drawing and painting programs may also save images in this format. An enormous amount of image search results will be .jpeg. .png is another common raster format. The difference it has from a JPEG is that it can save a background as transparent. By comparison, a JPEG will always replace a transparent background with the color white. Can you use raster images in the Innovation Center? Generally no, or not without revision. A fully photographic looking raster image has very limited possibilities, and it is hard to simplify into something usable. Only the laser can use it, and only in certain ways. If a raster image is itself simpler, say one color and larger in size, then there is a chance it can be traced and made into a vector image. That process will be covered later, but here is why it might be necessary. When you search for vector images, most of what you find are vector images that have been converted into raster images. The reason for that is that raster images are harder to edit, so putting them online as raster images instead of vector images, which stock photo websites do, helps push you to purchase the original vector version. A great way to avoid all that is to use a vector image search engine. We recommend the nounproject.com. You must sign up for a free account. Once you have, the site is an ad-free collection of millions of vector images. To get an image, follow these steps. First, search for an image like tree. Click on a result. Under Get This Icon, click Basic Download for $0. Click Download.svg. If you chose .png, that would be a raster image. Click Save File to a location on your computer of choice. The image is now available to open in Inkscape or another vector program. Note, vector images may not display thumbnails or open in non-vector editing programs. That's just part of their formatting. Noun project images are generally simple. If you are looking for more complicated vector results, another option is freepik.com. Like many similar websites, it has a lot more ads, and it's a mixture of free and paid images. For the free images, you'll only get a few downloads in a session. To use it, you can search by vector. Note how varied the results are. In theory, any vector image can be simplified into a more usable file, but some of these vector images may be too much work. When using images from freepik.com, they all will come in the .eps vector format. In the earlier part of the video, we noted this format does not always work in Inkscape. Specifically on Windows 10, Inkscape does not open EPS files without some custom settings. If that's the case, what you do is you go to a EPS to SVG converter, you pick the file that you've downloaded, convert it to SVG, and then Inkscape will open it. That leads us to the final option to find an image. Finding a raster image to convert into a vector. That process requires knowing how to use Inkscape, a free vector editing program. Our next video will provide an introduction to Inkscape, and once you've learned the basics of Inkscape, move on to the video about how to turn raster images into vector images.